Hello and welcome to another Smaulgld live stream. It is Wednesday, the 24th of April, 2019, and tonight's topic, bricks and mortar Bitcoin. We're going to talk about the acceptance of Bitcoin and Litecoin at retail establishments, bricks and mortar shops, and also about the further rise of Bitcoin and Litecoin ATMs. But tonight we're going to also talk about some of the news stories that we missed, some crypto stories, some gold and silver stories. And so let's get right at what happened in the gold and silver markets today. Not much of a day for either gold and silver, though they did manage to both eke out a small rise. Let's take a look at the gold and silver markets. Meanwhile, before we're pulling up those charts, the Dow Jones Industrial Average was down 59 points, or down 0.22%. At 26,597. The NASDAQ down the same about 0.23%, trading close to record high at 8,102. And the S&P 500 also down about the same, about 0.22%, down to 29.27. Let's take a look at the gold price. The gold price did go up about $3 today, up 0.25%. Still under 1,300, rose to 1274.89, and that's about where it is in the aftermarkets. Not much movement there. Silver had a better day, but actually a much better day earlier on. It fell off the high, although it did rise as high as $14.97. Didn't quite crack the $15 mark. Fell to $14.92, but was up 10 cents on the day, and that was good for a 0.69% raise. Right now it is at $14.90 in the aftermarkets, drifting slightly lower. And what did that do for the unsustainable out of whack gold silver ratio? Well, it went down a little bit. It went down from a high of 86.04 to 1, and it is currently at about 85.5 to 1. Not much movement there. All right, let's see what else we have in the gold market. We have the central banks are buying gold story. Some word out of India that Indian Central Bank, the Reserve Bank of India, may buy about 40 tons of gold this year. To me, that's a big yawn because, as you know, we cover, and I'm going to pull up a chart from the other day when we discussed Russia. The Indian import numbers are enormous, about 900 tons a year. So the fact that the Indian Central Bank might buy 40 tons a year doesn't mean much in the grand scheme of things. Currently, the Indian Central Bank, the Reserve Bank of India, has 607 tons. So if they end the year at 650 tons, that means that represents their entire amount of gold held by the Reserve Bank of India. And in a given year, the Indians pull in more gold, Indian citizens, temples, pull in more gold for their consumption every year. So you could see some years India will import 800, 900 tons of gold a year. So I don't get excited when the Reserve Bank of India says they might add 40 tons of gold this year. Now, it is significant that the central banks, like the Central Bank of Russia, Kazakhstan, China, are adding gold. It does reaffirm the fact that gold is a reserve asset, but in terms of its impact on the physical markets, it's negligible, but it does show that gold is a monetary asset. Unlike silver, silver is not listed as an asset on any central bank's balance sheet, so it is important that central banks are buying gold, but not because central banks are buying gold. That is all I need to know, and therefore that's a reason to buy gold yourself, because you think that somehow the central banks are buying gold hand over fist. They're not. They're buying moderate amounts of gold, and central banks like Kazakhstan and Russia are buying from their own supply. So is China. But there is now some talk about Russia having to import some gold, which they haven't done for years because they have a very good mining production, third largest in the world. China has the largest in the world, and they still import a lot of gold. But that's not to satisfy the People's Bank of China's gold requirements, to satisfy trading on the Shanghai Gold Exchange, which is large, and also to satisfy the general consumer demand for gold in China, just like in India. All right, let's move on. The other day we had talked about, we had Bernie on Smaulgld, and if you missed the show, it was Saturday night Smaulgld Saturday Night Silver with Smaulgld and Bernie, and he talked about the Franklin $50, and he gave a whole discussion about Ben Franklin and how he was the father of global warming and climate change because he used that damn kite and he found electricity, and that caused all the problems. Yeah, I didn't ask him to say that, but in any event, we did have a Ben Franklin $50, 90% silver special, and that's still going on, and the links are below this YouTube and BitChute. You could check that out. But today, we saw from the U.S. Mint some interesting, like they were following the Smaulgld channel and Bernie. They were talking about, in 1948, the likeness of Ben Franklin was featured on the obverse of the $50 coin. Franklin became the fourth person and the first non-president to have his portrait chosen for use on a coin of regular issue of federal government. They later changed that. He was the fifth person to be put on a coin. If you recall, or maybe you don't recall, but I'll let you know what I know, the early U.S. coins never showed an actual living person, or a actual person who had died, but they were representations of liberty, and they were not actual people. I think the first person on a coin was in 1909 when they added President Lincoln to the Lincoln penny. Because remember, before that, the penny had on it an Indian head. It was called the Indian head penny. The penny before that was a flying eagle, which represented an eagle flying. The nickels had on them Lady Liberty or a V or a buffalo nickel. You've heard about those. The quarters had standing liberty before you had George Washington in 1932. $50, you had the Barber $50, and then you had the Liberty Walking $50, and then you had the Ben Franklin $50. So it was not common to put people. Now that's all they have on there. You don't have representations of liberty on coins. In any event, you want to buy these coins, they are available. And the reason I mention it is because they're an interesting coin. They are on sale, I think, over at SD Bullion. And also at Golden Eagle Coin, they have them in almost uncirculated. It costs a little more. And Smaulgld gets a small commission if you do buy those. It's a way of helping out the site and helping out yourself, because I think they are indeed decent coins. And by the way, the other night we mentioned the coin dealers of the United States. About 250 of them are seeding the markets with some very nice coins, some rare coins, and indeed I think 3 quarter-ounce gold coins, and they're just putting them out there as part of a public relations ploy to get people to check their change, get interested in collecting coins. And there's a story here in the San Francisco Gate. We saw a story that we published the other day, or reported on the Today Show. So check your change. There may be some specially dropped in coins. They also showed, if you're in the grocery store, that they put some of the coins right on the lip of the shelves carrying the products. So you got to check there as well. All right, I think that's it for gold and silver at the moment. Yes, indeed it is. Chinese stories. Well, we mentioned the other day, people are always talking about the Belt and Road, China to crush the dollar. Well, it turns out that there's a lot of problems in the Belt and Road, but one of the issues is that China is now telling the people that they're working with that, hey, there's a lot of debt involved. But Japan is actually outdoing China in the Belt and Road. This is from the Wall Street Journal. China's silent Belt and Road is beating Japan's silent Belt and Road is beating China's. But, you know, gold, back yuan, China to crush the dollar, and so on. But there's an even more important story on China. They're saying that China has a dollar shortage. Remember, the entire Chinese market, the state-owned enterprises, state-owned banks, they issue dollar-denominated debt, not yuan-denominated debt. Indeed, the Chinese government has about $2 trillion worth of, not $2 trillion. I'm trying to think what the number is. I actually did a report on it. It's not a significant amount, but it's substantial that the People's Bank of China actually has issued sovereign debt denominated in dollars. Now, the reason they did that was in order to get a certain price because the state-owned enterprises borrow a lot of dollars, issue a lot of dollar-denominated debt, and they wanted to issue that bond about a year ago in order to perhaps set a market price a little lower for their borrowing rate. But it says here, Wall Street Journal again, Chinese banks are running out of dollars. The major Chinese commercial banks once had more dollar assets than liabilities, not anymore. So something very important to pay attention to, what's going on in China. All right. Anything else in the markets? I found this story is interesting, sent to me by Rogue Money News. Bloomberg Economics is throwing this out there. This isn't a new idea. This is something that a lot of central planners like, is the idea that central banks that run out of recession fighting tools, well, they can issue money that loses value if you don't spend it fast enough. Now, all these types of ideas have been out there. For example, you can issue a currency that has an expiration date on it. You don't spend it by, just like a gift card, by a certain period of time, but then it expires. That encourages people to spend. Remember, there is a school of economics that believes that spending drives the economy, not that savings builds up to allow proper allocation of capital, meaning you save your money and then you spend it, or you save your money and then you invest it. They realize that it's they think of that as cart before the horse, and they would rather you just go out and spend money because that's going to drive demand, and then the production will get going, not realizing that spending hasn't had, if they just hand out money, helicopter money, it hasn't come from anywhere, and that's inflationary. But they're still talking about this type of thing, and I can play with this too. Anyone can play with it, but it's not a real market. It's a centrally planned market. It's a market based on intervention. And I was thinking, look, government can issue negative yielding money at a premium to boost the economy. So, for example, they could sell you a second tier of money, and you can get $100 if you give them $90 of your current money. You can exchange it for $100 of the new money. So, well, that's great. But the catch would be you got to spend that money within a week. And that would be an immediate boost to the economy, people turning in old dollars, getting new dollars. And then, in a sense, you'd be getting a 10% discount on all your purchases as long as you used it within the week. If you wait a month, well, then it goes back to it's only worth $90. You wait 18 months, it's only worth 80%. And if you don't spend it in 2 years, you're out of money. And in a sense, that's a way the government can raise revenue. You turn in all the old money, they recapitalize the banks with that money. And if you don't somehow manage to spend it in a couple of years, well, whatever isn't spent, they've just gained that money. I'm not advocating these ideas. I'm just saying this is the kind of nonsense that's out there. And I thank Rogue Money News for sending that to me via Bloomberg. All right. Let's take a look at some crypto news, and then we're going to talk about bricks and mortar Bitcoin. Interesting story today. Bitcoin mining. Bitcoin mining, I read the other day, is now profitable again. I think the average cost of mining Bitcoins in the mid 3,000s. It depends on where you're mining from, but all in cost, they're saying now it is profitable again. And Swiss investment firm Bitfury has launched a Bitcoin mining fund, and they've received, according to another article, regulatory approval to go ahead and get going in Europe. And there it is, Bitfury Institutional Bitcoin Mining Fund gains EU regulatory approval. I don't think the mining itself, maybe some of it will be, I haven't read the prospectus, will be done in Europe, but I think they essentially try to find places where it makes sense for them to do the Bitcoin mining. All right, let's look at some Bitcoin pricing stories here. You're starting to hear stories about Bitcoin because it rose essentially $1,100-$1,200 since the beginning of April. Now you're hearing Bitcoin rallies to 6 months high. We've seen all these predictions, $500,000, $1 million, $7 trillion, whatever they want to say. But here, CNBC carrying it. This guy in his jacket here saying Bitcoin $6,000. You might as well take a look at the Bitcoin, Litecoin, and the other cryptocurrency prices where we are. These are Coinbase prices. Bitcoin at 54.40, up down 2%. Ethereum at 164.65, down 3.25%. XRP, which is Ripple, to 30 cents, down nearly 7%. Bcash down 4.5% to 278.27. Litecoin at 72.77, down 4%. Stellar Lumens at 10 cents, down 6.20%. Ethereum Classic, which is Seamus's favorite, is down to 5.59, down 6.6%. And Basic Attention Token, BAT, at 42 cents, which had been on a tear. It actually reached 50 cents, up from 18 cents a month ago, is down 3.05%. All right, let's see if we have anything else on pricing for. Note here from CoinDesk that noting that Litecoin led Bitcoin's price rally. Litecoin had risen about a month earlier, all the way up to $60, $70 from about $30, $40. And then it also rose in tandem when Bitcoin rose in April all the way up to $100. So Litecoin made a couple of big moves first, a month in advance of Litecoin, a month in advance of Bitcoin's move, and then rose in tandem. But now Litecoin has been falling at a faster rate, and Bitcoin is somewhat holding its own. I'm not sure what you can make out of that. Litecoin has its halving coming up later on this year. I think Litecoin rose 220% and Bitcoin rose 80%, so it makes sense that Litecoin would take a pull back. All right. What else do we have on the cryptocurrency side? The other day we mentioned TD Ameritrade, and I just want to review that again. They're saying that NASDAQ is quietly testing Bitcoin-based and Litecoin products under the symbol CXERX. Now, it hasn't started trading. We know that Fidelity Digital Assets is planning on having a crypto trading platform. They're already allowing institutional investors to trade on their platform. It's a small number, but they're eyeing a launch, I believe, like Coinbase. I mean, that's trading, Binance, all those independent cryptocurrency trading platforms are monies that the traditional Wall Street trading platforms aren't getting. Now, Fidelity is based out of Boston, but when I say Wall Street, I mean your traditional Charles Schwab, TD Ameritrade, JP Morgan, whatever the Fidelity Investments, whatever the online trading platforms are, they don't have any crypto revenues. And clearly Fidelity wants in, RSX, TD Ameritrade backed, all these entities want in. It looks like they have something planned because Charlie Lee from Litecoin even noticed it. I think if you go in and you set up a test account, you can see the Litecoin and Bitcoin. It says test symbol. Now, they can't both have the same symbol, but indeed you do see in the TD Ameritrade dashboard, you can see a bid ask for Litecoin. It's a pretty big spread there. Maybe they want to make the money on the spread. Not sure how it's going to work, but it is an interesting development. Tokens. Now, Samsung is talking about planning a new blockchain mainnet featuring Samsung Coin. It's important to note here that when .com was a big bubble, the companies that had websites, they were the .com companies. And most of them didn't really have a business model. They had a website, and whatever the name of whatever they were selling, or whatever the name of the company was, you just added .com to it. And that gave it some type of cachet, some type of, just like blockchain today, but it never really got off the ground because the SEC clamped down on that. I think an iced tea company, Long Island Iced Tea, tried to call itself Long Island Blockchain, and the stock went nuts. But back then, during the .com boom, they weren't legitimate companies. They were legitimate companies. They weren't necessarily profitable or had any shot of ever being profitable, but they were entities that were set up, and one of the features that they had were that they had websites, and the websites ended in .com, hence your .com bubble. As we know, most of those companies went bust, but we do know 20 years later now that some of those companies, like Amazon and eBay, are still with us. However, what's more important than picking the winners and losers out of the large crowd of .com companies that are no longer with us, like Pets.com, Webvan.com, and so on, every company today is a .com company. And I think that's a point that's lost on everyone. It's not just Amazon.com, and used to have e-commerce companies and then everyone else. Well, now every company, Macy's, Sears, Walmart, Target, they all have a .com portion of their business. I would say no company, no significant company, doesn't have a website with .com. And I think that's what's happening the same with cryptocurrencies. I think at some point, every company will have a token. Whether it represents, what it represents, I'm not sure. It could just be all of the companies that now have trading certificates will move their trading over to a token. And that'll just happen as a matter of course. But then I also think that many companies like Facebook and JP Morgan, they'll all have their own coin, like Chuck E. Cheese will have its own token as well. They already have a physical manifestation of a token, and companies will issue their own tokens that'll be worth, in most cases, there'll be a stable price. So for example, the JP Morgan stable coin, or the Coinbase stable coin, or the Gemini Winklevoss twins stable coin, what they're designed to do, they're not designed to, you don't invest in them, you don't buy them and hope that they go up or down. Really wouldn't make a stitch of sense to do that because you can just hold on to dollars. What they are, though, is a way of holding money in the system that you might be trading in. So if you're trading on Coinbase or the Gemini platform, or you're trading on the JP Morgan platform, the idea is you don't cash out into dollars and have that money sent to your bank. You cash out into JP Morgan coin, you cash out into Coinbase, True Dollar, whatever it's called, or Gemini, and you leave the money in a token. And the idea is that that stable coin is as good as a dollar, even though it's not a dollar, and it's supposedly backed by, in JP Morgan's case, by the cash that they hold, or in the case of the trading companies, platforms, stable coins, supposedly it's backed by, I'll put something up there, backed by an equivalent amount of cash in an FDIC approved account. Now, Samsung will issue a token, I think, at some point 20 years from now. Every company will not only have a website, but they'll have their own token that you can use and trade. I would imagine that Amazon will put out their own token as well. In fact, I would imagine they would do something very similar. I bought something from Amazon. It was like 6 months ago. They allowed me to buy a card. It was almost similar. It was the reverse of that little example I gave about how you can have money you buy from the government. Actually, it was a similar thing. You pay $90 and you get $100 worth of new cash. Well, I could see Amazon. I bought a $100 gift card, and I paid $90 for it. Maybe that's in the back of my mind where I got this idea, but didn't have any expiration date on it, and I was able to spend the $100, even though I paid $90 for it. But of course, I had to spend it on Amazon. Well, you can easily see how that could be a token, and you can buy Amazon tokens at a discount, and then at some point they can just issue Amazon tokens. You can store it. You don't have to have a gift card. I mean, it's really just a format. There's really no magic to it. So when people get excited about stable coins, they're really just a mechanism to help the flow of commerce by keeping everything in a system where they can control it. They're not relying on a third party. So if you fund your tokens, you buy $500 worth of Amazon tokens, you then don't have to buy, and Amazon doesn't have to worry about worrying about credit card payments. You just send Amazon $500. Now you got $500 worth of Amazon tokens at a stable price, and then you can spend them from there. So I do see that happening, and that's a trend, I believe. And that'll also eventually, just as online companies were the first ones to have .com, well, the first ones to have cryptocurrencies will be the larger companies. They'll figure out how to add a token into their offering. At some point, small companies will do the same thing. Just as small companies today, even I work with some companies, helping them set up websites. Every company, not just the big companies, have websites. Almost every small company, from florists to local pubs, will have a website as well. And eventually, they'll probably have their own tokens. And it's the way I think the world is going is putting everything on blockchains, putting everything in the systems. You'd have the same thing where your pub can issue a stable coin. And it's really not a big innovation, because you can go, and they already do this, you go to a Subway or someplace and they'll give you, or a coffee shop, and they'll give you some card. And when you buy coffee, they stamp the card. Well, it'd be the same thing. They can issue tokens. Crypto tokens, and you can get your coffee or your drinks in the same way. All right, let's now take a look at this bricks and mortar Bitcoin concept. Now, the reason I think this is important is if you go and you think about what's Bitcoin and Litecoin and all of these cryptocurrencies to be distinguished from tokens that are representations of something. So, for example, the basic attention token is not a cryptocurrency. It can be used as one, but it reflects actually something. It reflects advertising advertising dollars that are earned through, I don't want to get into a whole description of the basic attention token, but it's not just they issue it and it has a fluctuating value. It's based on what goes in and out of the system, which are ads that are generated through the Brave browser. And there are a lot of these types of entities. They issue tokens, but they're more akin to securities because you actually have to do something. The company has to do something. The company has to grow in order for the value of the token to grow. And that's not the case with Bitcoin or Litecoin. There is nothing that is done. It's just a currency. Now, what's happening with the purpose of these cryptocurrencies, for the most part, you would imagine they always tout the big advantages are that you can use them to send money from Nicaragua to the Philippines, or you can use it to send money from Mexico to the United States, Venezuela to Russia, back and forth. And you saw the lightning torch. You can send Bitcoin all over the world. And that's one of the main features of an electronic currency. That's an advantage of an electronic currency, whether it's a cryptocurrency or even just digital dollars, over gold and silver, because you can't transfer gold and silver that easily. Okay, and that's what we see happening, and that's why everybody thinks of Bitcoin, and you think of online shopping. The big holy grail for a lot of Bitcoiners is, when is Amazon going to accept Bitcoin? When is this online merchant going to accept Bitcoin? And so on. Now, also another anomaly in the Bitcoin space is that this financialization concept. It's what I've been talking about. Wall Street wants to get in. Wall Street is a middleman. They really offer no value other than acting as a middleman for trades. That's what trading platforms are. It's not a peer-to-peer trade. When you sell your Bitcoin or Litecoin on Coinbase, you buy it through Coinbase, or if you bought it through Coinbase, you sell it back to Coinbase and then they sell it to somebody else. You're not doing a peer-to-peer exchange. Now, there are peer-to-peer platforms, but they're not as prevalent. And of course, nothing is stopping you. The idea was not even to have a platform, would be for Joe Smith in the United States and Mario Draghi in Italy to be able just to transfer their Bitcoin or Litecoin back and forth to each other with no middleman. That's what a peer-to-peer currency is. But we are seeing now that the financialization, they want to put Bitcoin into ETFs. They want to have these trading platforms. They want to store the Bitcoin for you rather than people storing them themselves. Not your keys, not your Bitcoin, all that kind of stuff. They want to store that. And so that's another anomaly in the Bitcoin ecosystem, is that you have these middlemen. But another one that's interesting is the idea that you would spend your Bitcoin not in a virtual space, meaning you don't go online and spend it and order HODL fuel from a company and have it send you your products, or to go to an online gaming company and use your Bitcoin or Litecoin to place your bets. You'd actually go to a place. And I think this is going to be a relatively big deal. And here's why. If you have a company, a bricks and mortar store, it could be a pub, it could be anywhere, and you're starting to see these types of signs, Bitcoin accepted here. It actually makes sense, because the same advantages of accepting Bitcoin online, because it's perfectly suited to be an online currency, well, it also makes sense for companies, bricks and mortar companies, to accept Bitcoin for the same reason. Not only is it convenient, that's not the same reason, but because you avoid the fees. You don't have the same issues that you have with accepting credit card fees, chargebacks, and so on. So if you walk into a store, and Johnny Litecoin does this all throughout New Jersey, he gets these companies to accept Bitcoin or Litecoin. And there's really no downside to accepting Bitcoin or Litecoin. Now, there's a lot of people out there that don't understand that when a company accepts Bitcoin through these types of arrangements, they're not taking any risk at all. They're not taking the risk that if they accept the Bitcoin price is going to go up or down, it's too volatile. that what the payment processor does is they accept the Bitcoin, they convert it immediately into the fiat amount of the price of the products or services that are rendered or sold, and then they on-sell the Bitcoin or Litecoin, whatever they accepted, onto a trading platform. So they act as a middleman. A payment processor is nothing more than a middleman who takes a very small fee to convert it into fiat and then ships it out to the merchant. And the merchant never sees the Bitcoin or the Litecoin, and then makes another bit of a fee when it ships it out to a platform and sells it. And that payment processor makes a cut on both sides. Now, the reason it makes sense for the merchant is not only do they not have to pay the fee, but here's the kicker for a bricks and mortar store or even an online store. Since it really doesn't entail any risk and it doesn't cost much, and in fact, many payment processors already are Bitcoin or Litecoin enabled. You just have to add it as a feature to your payment processor. And when you do that, it's quite possible that you are going to get incremental business. Not necessarily just somebody who has Bitcoin and also has a credit card. The person who has the Bitcoin and the credit card may decide, well, you know, I'm just going to use the credit card. I don't really want to spend my Bitcoin, so I'm going to use the credit card. And then the merchant doesn't really get the advantage of that. But there's going to be cases where people, especially if the price rises, which many do expect it to rise, where people who are hodlers are going to want to spend or sell their Bitcoin or Litecoin or whatever it is. Now, it would make sense in many instances if you say, let's say you want to buy a high-ticket item. Let's say it's a Lambo, or let's say it's not a Lambo. Let's just say you got $25,000 and you want to buy yourself a Ford Focus, and the dealer accepts Bitcoin or Litecoin, and you've got $25,000 worth of Bitcoin or Litecoin. Well, it doesn't make a lot of sense to go to Coinbase, sell your Bitcoin or Litecoin, pay them, have the money converted into fiat, and then send to your bank, and then to have the money in your bank, and then to go to the dealer, and then write the dealer a check for the Ford Focus, or to have it on your credit card. However you're going to pay, there's a lot of steps in there, and there's also a lot of fees involved from the dealer's perspective and from your perspective. But if you already have the Bitcoin or Litecoin and the dealer accepts it, that's a dealer who may get an incremental bit of business that he or she may not have other got if they didn't accept Bitcoin. And it doesn't cost them anything to set it up. So they put one of these little stickers in the window. You know that they sell Ford Focus. That's what you want. You can spend the money, and it's a lot more convenient. So I do see that happening as the price rises. If companies or merchants, bricks and mortar stores want to get that business, it would make a lot of sense. And when things make economic sense, they happen. Now you could say, well, I don't see a lot of companies accepting Bitcoin. Well, they haven't figured it out yet. It really doesn't. And if you look at coin dealers, for example, online coin dealers, you might be able to find one or two that don't accept a form of crypto payment. Why is that? Because they know there is some overlap between cryptocurrencies and precious metals buyers, and that it is incremental business that they may get. So I think that's what you're going to see happening. Now, there's another reason I think that is going to happen. Because bricks and mortar stores are now currently, if we go back to this chart we had, which we didn't discuss, the proliferation of Bitcoin ATMs, Litecoin ATMs, is really moving apace, because these are actual physical places. You don't buy them online. It's an online kiosk, but you buy them in a physical bricks and mortar store. So you go into a store and they happen to have one of these Bitcoin ATMs. Many times it might be in a deli, a package store, whatever it is, and they don't even know what Bitcoin is. They know they can make a little money, so they put the thing in there and they make some fees off of having the Bitcoin ATM in there. But go one step further. If the company that puts or the store or the bar that has the Bitcoin ATM on site, and people now buy the Bitcoin, remember, they're going to do it through their phone. They're not going to do it through a computer. They're going to do it through the phone, and they're going to have that phone with them. Well, they're now going to have, let's say they buy $50 worth of whatever it is. They now have on their phone money that they can spend. And where do you think they can spend it? Well, they can spend it exactly at the place where they bought the Bitcoin, meaning at the Bitcoin ATM at the shop. So if you're at the pub, you're at the package store, 7-Eleven, wherever it is, it would make sense if you have a Bitcoin ATM at your place of business to also accept Bitcoin as well. Now, these Bitcoin ATMs are proliferating, as I've mentioned. In January 2018, there were only 2,000 of them worldwide. January 2015, there were only 326 of them worldwide. As of today, the most recent numbers from Coin, I think it's called Coin Radar ATM, there are now 4,654 of them around the world. There are now over 2,900 Bitcoin ATMs in the United States, 2,915. And globally, there are over 3,000, or exactly 3,038 Litecoin ATMs. So those are the two big coins that are being dispensed at these ATMs. Now, globally, 4,600 is not a lot, but we're growing these numbers, looks like over 100% a year. So they're doubling every year as the chart. Coin Radar ATM, I think is what it's called. CoinRadarATM.com. And that's what that chart comes from. And you could see there's a big growth in that. And if the companies, the bricks and mortar stores that have these ATMs on their sites, they should be able to also get that customer money back when it's time to spend them. Now, remember, for the most part, I wouldn't imagine a lot of people would spend. Apparently, the fees on these are expensive. The spreads are very high. But someone's first encounter with Bitcoin could be through, or Litecoin, through one of these ATMs, and they go home, they figure it out, and then they buy online, and then they might have a little bit more. So when they come back to the store, they have more money to spend. Another big movement for this bricks and mortar Bitcoin concept is Coinstar. Now remember, there's 4,600 Bitcoin ATMs globally, 2,900 plus in the United States. But add to that, and these numbers don't include that, but Coinstar, you know, then you see them in the grocery stores, the places where you dump your coins and you can get gift cards and or they're kind of expensive. You get like 90%. If you put in $10 worth of coins, they give you like a voucher for like $9 that you can bring to the cashier and get your money. But if you put $10 in, you can get a $10 Amazon gift card and so on. But a lot of these Coinstar machines have now been equipped to also sell Bitcoin, and I've seen a few of them in my area. There's thousands of these. So you add that to the Bitcoin ATMs, and you're talking probably well over 10,000 places where you can just walk in and buy Bitcoin. And of course, if you bought it in a place at a bricks and mortar shop, well, then you can probably also spend it. It would make sense to be able to spend it there. Now, I know the grocery stores that I visit, they may have these, but they don't accept Bitcoin. Now, that's probably a mistake because, again, it doesn't cost them anything to accept the Bitcoin. And even if they get an incremental, just 1%, or even half of 1%, that's still money that they otherwise would not have received. And as I say, if it makes economic sense, and there really is, there's no friction. It doesn't take a lot of, so for example, back in the internet days, the days of pre-internet, it was a pretty big deal, and it somewhat still is, for a small business to have a website. I mean, it's a lot easier now to have a website than it was 15, 20 years ago. If you were setting up websites for people, you can charge thousands of dollars to set them up. Today, with a little bit of effort, you can put together a website. They even have these off-the-shelf things. They're not very good, from GoDaddy, but you can get a website set up, and it's not going to cost you an arm and a leg. Well, it's even easier, and it makes sense to have a website. You kind of have to have one. Now, for accepting Bitcoin or Litecoin, it doesn't really cost you much at all. And that's my point, that it is pretty frictionless, and there's no downside to having it, and it's essentially only upside. And if something's only upside, even if it's not right now a big upside, maybe an afterthought, yeah, I'll accept Bitcoin, and then no one comes in for a week, no one comes in for 2 weeks, and well, that was a waste of time. Well, not really, because you didn't really spend a lot of resources to have your payment processor add a Bitcoin or Litecoin option to your payments. But let's say the price of Bitcoin or Litecoin quote, skyrockets, well, a lot of people are going to look to spend their money. And they're going to be walking around. They may just, they'll spend it online, but if they see a place that accepts, they see one of those signs on there that there's a place that accepts Bitcoin or Litecoin, that might be the place where they dump a significant portion of their Bitcoin. And who's the recipient? Who wins? Everyone wins. The store owner wins because there's a transaction they got, probably from a person who probably couldn't have afforded whatever they bought, but for the increase in the price of the Bitcoin or Litecoin, whatever they used. And the person obviously is the winner, is the person who's using the Bitcoin or Litecoin, because even if not only is there a windfall if the price has gone up and that's why they're spending it, it's still easier for them to spend it directly with a merchant, for them to then sell it on Coinbase, wait for that to clear, wait for them to send the cash to your bank, and then use the money from the bank. Even if it's a debit card, there's still a fee to be paid to the merchant when you use a debit card. I didn't know that. When you would think that when you use your debit card, the merchant isn't getting screwed. No, they're getting screwed. They're getting paid. They're just as much, I think, as if you had used your credit card. So the merchant would rather you pay cash or even a check, but then they take the rest of the checks in the bank, going to bounce. But of course, if you're paying with the Bitcoin or Litecoin, they're going to get the money immediately. Transaction's going to be confirmed within a minute or so, and the person who has the Bitcoin or Litecoin is going to make their transaction, and probably a transaction that they couldn't have finished unless they had the Bitcoin or Litecoin. All right, I think that's... Oh, the other thing I was showing is now, not only are these Bitcoin ATMs on the rise, they now have the Lightning. They had the world's first Lightning-enabled Bitcoin ATM has been launched. So these are things that happen incrementally. I think they're going to happen as we go further. And I think what happens is a lot of people, they don't see it happening. They don't see it widespread. And therefore they say it's not happening. Well, I'm not sure that's the best way of looking at it. There's not going to be a line in the sand where one day something happens. These things happen incrementally. And they happen... I don't think people are surprised if they see a Bitcoin ATM anymore. They're obviously not going to be surprised anymore when they see Bitcoin for sale at a Coinstar machine. These are just things that start to happen, and they become commonplace eventually. And it used to be you could make news by saying you were accepting Bitcoin. That's not news anymore. So I expect to see more of that. Let's see what you guys are saying. By the way, I did add, I apologize for last night. This is a very simple fix. I clicked on the eye on my OBS and that shut off the visuals, so you didn't get a chance to see the visuals for half of last night's show. And I did post on Smaulgld.com all of the images you might have missed. But a couple of the things that we were talking about last, I do want to show, was this Moreau painting here. And I was talking about the market, and that a lot of people, the very common argument against Bitcoin is that Bitcoin is not unique. It's artificial scarcity, and that anyone can make Bitcoin. All you have to do is just use the same protocol, and everyone can make it. And that's kind of a very naive way of looking at it. And I put together this tweet here that's basically saying the case against modern art. It has no intrinsic value. If you guys were around last night, if you haven't heard it, we went through a intrinsic value analysis. Got some good comments on that as well. But modern art has no intrinsic value, just like Bitcoin has no intrinsic value other than the canvas, which may be reusable, and in some paint that can't be reused. But here's the kicker for modern art. There's no limit to how much modern art can be produced. Just like you can make as much cryptocurrency as you want. Anyone can do it, right? Child can make modern art. Just anyone with $20 for a canvas and a few extra dollars for some paint, anyone can make modern art. So it's the same thing with Bitcoin. That's a foolish argument just to say that, oh, anyone can make it. It has to be, there's an entire system around Bitcoin that is not going to exist around Smaulgld coin. If I just want to issue, now I'm not talking about a token. If I want to issue a currency, not backed by anything, not worth anything, meaning that it's not backed by mugs, and I could do that. I can issue a token backed by mugs. That's not the same thing as a cryptocurrency. I just want to take the Bitcoin protocol and create Smaulgld currency, not backed by mugs. It's not based on anything. It's a copy of Bitcoin. Well, no one's going to use that. It's not backed by mugs. It's not worth anything. No one's going to mine it. If I pre-mine it, I cheapen it myself. So the idea that somehow anyone can make Bitcoin and therefore it's not really 21 million. It's just zillions. It's the same as I can make modern art too. I can go out and buy a canvas. I can get finger paints out. Well, no one's going to buy it. There's no market for Smaulgld art other than on the mugs. So it's the same thing with similar things. Nothing is exactly the same when you do an analogy. So I just wanted to show that we didn't get to see that last night. And of course, this one was an interesting. I never even heard of this guy, but this guy is an artist. Look at that, $110 million for that painting of a skull. Anyone can do it, right? Well, you go ahead. You make a painting of a skull, and you see if you can unload it for $110 million. It don't work that way. All right. Anything else here is there anything from last night? Just want to make sure. I mean, they're all on the Smaulgld site. You can go check those out. Yeah, I just want to mention this story. I like this story. This is a crime novel, apparently an inside job, mobs involved. There is a museum in Boston, and it's called the Gardner Museum. It's an interesting backstory. Woman and her husband, they collected all this art. It's not a museum, but back in around 1990, March 18th, 1990 to be precise, two people walked in with cop uniforms on, and they just stole these paintings. They weren't just any paintings. There were Rembrandts, Vermeers. I mean, they had these world-class paintings in there. And you can see from the picture there's no pictures on the wall. That's because they were stolen, so they left them there. But the point of this is, and apparently the mafia was involved, a mafia kingpin, a godfather. They went to his house. There were uniforms, cop uniforms there. There was a list of the artwork that was stolen, but they never were able to pin it on them. And but the point was, at the time, it was $500 million. It says billion. $500 million worth of art stolen. And again, no intrinsic value whatsoever. All right, let's go now to your comments and see what you guys have been saying. I know you guys like to talk amongst yourself. If you want me to comment on one of your comments, you have a question, put SMAULGLD in your comment. It'll show up in red or orange or something so that I can see it. Otherwise, I can't go through all the comments and just pick out what I find interesting. All right. Roger Henley's talking about Banksy. I see that. Yeah, Banksy's another one. Modern art. All right. Let's go through our comments here. I did put up the Smaulgld fundraising page here. By the way, someone asked the other night, and I forgot to mention it. Yes, we still would like to do DLive. If you want to get off this platform and do live streaming on DLive or PewDiePie is, go to DLive, I think it's .com/Smaulgld and sign up over there, and we can start live streaming there when I get to 200, if I get to 200 followers. Small percentage of you go over there and do that, we can get started right away, but I do appreciate it. I think about 15 or 16 people have already signed up, but we need to keep reminding you to do that, otherwise we won't be able to move. Okay, and there's your fundraising page. And the other thing, see, this is a point here why I think the Litecoin and Bitcoin will become more greatly adopted. It's also a way that you can get shut off of Patreon, you can get shut off of Subscribestar, you can get shut off of PayPal, and we hear some of these high-profile, controversial content providers have been booted. There's Project Veritas. It's got a story out now about a guy, I think it was the Proud Boys. They were selling, I don't know, T-shirts and maybe even mugs, I don't know, but T-shirts, and their bank cut them off. But what a bank can't do is cut you off of your Bitcoin or Litecoin accounts because there is no central person or central organization that can do that. So I do accept Bitcoin and Litecoin donations. Also, you can send items of value in the mail, small items of value, nothing too valuable because otherwise you have to insure it, or check. And people have said, I got a nice 5-ounce silver bar once, very appreciative of that. Checks and also cash as well, or you can become a Smaulgld patron or join Subscribe Star and donate a small recurring amount each and every month, or you can make a one-time payment via PayPal. But I will tell you, when you send $5 on PayPal, I get like $4.32. If you send $5 of Bitcoin or Litecoin, I get pretty much all of it. Or if you send $5 check or you send a $5 bill, which many people have done, I do appreciate that, I get $5. So there is an issue here, and it does make sense that the payment processors and the Visas and the MasterCards and the patrons and the PayPal, they are middlemen that definitely take their cut. And it's okay if they take their cut. There's a convenience value. But when they not only take their cut, but then they can decide, we're going to cut you out, that's not a good thing. Because then they become the 1%, and then they take your money, and then you starve to death. Can't have that. All right. The poor starve to death. Mugs are a monetary asset. Chrono Trigger fan is here. Yes, indeed. Good to see. Pablo. Everyone's here. Okay. Seth Shepard. I don't own one Bitcoin yet. Oh, he means he owns Bitcoin, but he doesn't own a whole one. Okay. Let's see. Sorry for being silent. I'm trying to read. I can do it probably. I could talk really fast while I'm taking a look here. But I am interested in what you're saying, but I know a lot of it isn't directed towards me. But I want to catch the tenor of the conversations that you're having. See if there's anything in there that maybe I can comment on. Roger says the JP Morgan crypto coin could be backed by 800 million ounces of silver. LOL. That's ridiculous. All right. Let's see. I'm just scrolling, looking now for my name, and I'm not seeing it, which is fine. Lots of comments. Oh, there's one. Pablo Pena. Smaulgld coin. You get a discount when purchasing a mug. Yeah, you can issue a token like that. By the way, if you're interested in buying them, I still have a few left. Most of the I've stopped stockpiling and stacking mugs here. I've sent out probably at least 100 just directly from here. I have only the classic and the super classic mugs, but I do ship those priority mail. They go in 2 days, so that shipping is included. So the prices are $23.99 for the super classic, $19.99 for the classic, but that includes, if you're in the continental U.S., anywhere between $8 and $11 worth of shipping. But you get them in 2 days, and you get a note from Smaulgld. And I think I still have some Smaulgld Game Changer erasers. So if you order those from Smaulgld.com, you can click on them, and you'll see it's a PayPal option. And then I get that, and then tomorrow I go to the post office and I mail them out for you. Now, if you want to pay by Bitcoin or Litecoin, just let me know. Email me at Smaulgld@gmail and tell me you're sending Litecoin or Bitcoin. Put your address, and then I'll ship out your coin. DB Stupid is here. All right. Kenista. Smaulgld, love your work. Keep it up. Well, thank you for joining us tonight. And anything else? Oh. Anton S. Smaulgld, there is barely any development on Litecoin GitHub page. I saw something recently. We're talking about where, and I don't know how they track this, like how many developers are working on particular projects. And they said how many people working on Litecoin projects, and they listed like these 3 coins I never heard of. And it wasn't Bitcoin that was the top one. So I'm not sure how development work gets done, who tracks it. I know the Litecoin Foundation and Charlie Lee says he's working on this Mimblewimble fungibility. They're working on privacy. I don't know who's working on it, and some say that's a very important point as to the health of a particular coin is the amount of development. I mean, it's as good as any, maybe, of determining. I'm not sure. People look at transactions. People look at hash rates. People look at charts, price charts. Hard to tell. Ann, are you stacking Smaulgld mugs in your Airbnb? Now, that would be a nice order, Ann. What you can do is you go to the... I mean, I can send out bulk. I don't really have that many of them, though. But if you wanted to put in your Airbnb Smaulgld mugs, if you go to the Smaulgld, the Zazzle site, they're more equipped to ship out dozens of mugs. You can equip your all of your rental properties with small gold mugs. All right. I think we're done. All right, everyone. I want to thank you very much for joining me today, and we'll see you tomorrow. And I guess we're getting close to Saturday Night Silver again with Smaulgld. And I'll probably pull the Franklin Mint, not the Frank. They're not the Franklin Mint. They are the Franklin half dollars. I think they're just a little over $1 over spot currently over on SD Bullion. As I mentioned, the link for Golden Eagle coin has them in almost uncirculated condition, so they look almost brand new, which is an interesting coin. So check those out. I'll leave you that picture again, and then we'll see you tomorrow night. Unless anyone has, maybe this subscribe star. Unless anyone has any comments or questions, I'm going to give you the Bernie 10-second countdown, and then we will be on our way, and we'll see you tomorrow. So we will start the countdown now. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1%, 0. Oh, got some questions here. Roger Henley, Lewis, when are you getting green screen for video live streams? Explain to me what a video green screen is. Live stream. Does that just mean you get to see my mug? Meaning my face, not my Smaulgld mug? I'm not sure what the advantage of that would be. Maple Hedgehog, Smaulgld, have you heard anything about the headline, Myth soars after Mithril announces will be the first project on Binance Chain? No, I have not. I've got to pay closer attention. It looks like everyone is saying good night, but I'm waiting for Roger to explain why Smaulgld should have a green screen. Let's see if he said anything here. Live will be nice. I don't know what that means. All right. Well, I'm going to give Roger 10 seconds. Then I'm getting off. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1%, 0. Have a good night.